What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now in many of my videos I say that you can request a car analysis by commenting the name of that car down below in the comment section. And many of you are then also doing this. But to my surprise, there was one particular car which received many requests. Among others, Sitz, Randall and John requested an analysis for the Lexus LC500. Now to be completely honest with you, the LC500 was and is a bit of a foreign car to me. I never ever saw one on the road here in Europe, and actually the only time I saw one in the flesh was at a car show. Now when I started to dig into the LC500 market and read through the forums, I realized that this car and the market are actually more interesting than it might seem from the outside. I mean, some cars are even selling above MSRP. Also, I get the impression that the owners of the LC500 appreciate it very much for what it is. A luxury cruiser with a beautiful sounding, naturally aspirated V8. And that is of course quite rare these days. Now let's start by having a look at the current market. You can see the model year on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. And you can also see that the market is split by trim level. And for this analysis I only included the V8s. The hybrids are not included. Now this graph reveals a few interesting things about the LC500 market. There are namely cars which are priced over list. And the one which got my attention first was this car here with a price tag of $200,000. I mean, can you believe that? 200k for an LC500. If you are into LC500s, then you know that this isn't an ordinary LC500. This is a convertible of the Inspiration series. And besides that you get a nice interior, some traveling bags and a nice paint color, you also get a limited edition car. Only 100 of these are made. Now the MSRP for one is $120,825. So that means that this one over here has a markup of roughly $79,000. And after some googling, I found that this is most likely a consignment deal car where the private owner is trying to flip his or her brand new car. Now the big question is of course, will it sell for this markup? I don't think so. You can see for example that there is another Inspiration series for sale at MSRP. But then again, this car might be already sold. Nevertheless, when I read through some forums I found that when the Inspiration series was released, there were actually quite many dealers who offered the car at MSRP. But I also found that there was a large bunch of people offering the cars with a big markup. The largest one which I found was around $65,000. Now if we move away from the Inspiration series, then you can also see that there are two other cars here listed above MSRP. These are two brand new convertibles, and to my knowledge it is not possible to spec them up to $140,000. Now I understand that the availability of the convertibles is quite limited, but still I'm not sure if it's worth to pay the markup. In any case, because the cars which are priced above MSRP are more an exception than a rule, I will remove them from the graph, and I will also remove the Inspiration series. Now that the graph is a bit cleaned up, we can still see a few other interesting things. First, you can see that there's a group of new cars which is priced way above the market. But this makes sense. They are the convertibles and they have an MSRP which is around $8,000 higher than the coupes. Second, you can see that there are two cars from model year 2018 which are priced extremely high. And the reason for this is that they are new cars. Otherwise we can see that there are a total of 242 cars for sale and that prices fluctuate a lot. They start at $60,000 but go up to $110,000. The median price of course lays somewhere in the middle at $95,000. Now then, what can you expect in terms of depreciation on an LC500? Let's draw a depreciation curve in the graph and have a look. Before we do that though, if this video helps you in your purchasing decision or you just like it, please support the channel by smashing that like button. Alright, back to the graph. You can see that the curve is now included and that the market looks a bit different. I namely cleaned it up to get a good curve. And this means that I only included the coupes and that model year 2021 only contains new cars and that the other model years only contain used cars. And with those administrative messages out of the way, let's have a look at the numbers. On average, an LC500 loses $9,800 per year. And in relative terms this is around 12%. And like I mentioned, this is an average number. And you can see from the shape of the depreciation curve that it differs a little depending on the age of the car. In the first year, the hit is of course the largest. The LC500 loses here around $12,000 or 12% of the median new price. In the second year, this number decreased to $9,500. And in the third year it decreased to $7,900. So you can clearly see that the curve is starting to flatten, but that the market is still far away from bottoming. Another thing which you can observe is that some cars from model year 2018 saw a much larger depreciation than others. And the reason for this is the difference in mileage. The median mileage lays with 17,000 miles, 10,000 miles above the ones for cars from model year 2019. The highest mileage car over here does then also have 84,000 miles. The ones which are priced slightly higher tend to have a mileage between 40 and 50,000 miles. And to put this a bit into perspective, the cars from model year 2019 and 2020 have a median mileage of 7 and 6,000 miles. But since we are now anyway talking about the mileage, let's have a look at the depreciation per 1,000 miles driven. And that we will do with this graph. You can see that we have now the mileage on the horizontal axis and the price still on the vertical axis. Now if we first have a look at the mileage, then you can see that most cars have a mileage of 10,000 miles. However, you can also find cars with a way higher mileage. This car over here has, for example, a mileage of 84,000 miles. It is then also no surprise that this is the cheapest LC500 on the market. Now if we look at the depreciation curve, then we can see that the average depreciation per 1,000 miles driven is $834. And also here, you should interpret this as an average. You can see that the cars lose most of their value in the first 10,000 miles and that after 20,000 miles, the curve starts to flatten. Also, you can see that it doesn't really make sense that the curve is going up here. You can see then also that the shaded area is large for the cars over 30,000 miles, and this means that there's a lot of uncertainty in the estimate. Alright, let's pause now for a second, because we saw a lot of numbers. But all of these numbers of course refer to the current market. But if you're planning to purchase an LC500 or you already own one, you're probably most interested in the future values. So how do those look? Well, if you own a car from model year 2019 or 2020, then it is easy. For those years we already know the depreciation curve, so if you want to know how much your car will be worth 1 year from now, you can just move your car 1 year down on that depreciation curve. If you add more mileage than the average mileage increase, your car will lose more, and if you add less mileage than the average, your car will lose less. But what if you're planning to purchase a car from model year 2018, or you own a car from model year 2018? For that model year, we don't have the curve yet. We do know, however, the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1,000 miles driven. So let's plug those into the forecasting model, and the result of that is appearing now on your screen. You can see that in blue we still have the current market, but that in orange we have now the forecasted prices. And note that there are many forecasted price points, because each forecasted point is a forecast for a car with a different mileage. Now, on average, you can expect a car from model year 2018 to lose $4,600. And this of course means that the model predicts a further flattening of the curve. You can also see that there's a small split in the market forecast. High mileage cars are forecasted to end up in the low 60s, while the low mileage cars are predicted to end up in the $70,000 to $75,000 price range. Now after all of those numbers, you might or might not be convinced that the LC500 is the right car for you from a depreciation perspective. But since the LC500 is quite an alternative choice, you might also be looking at other cars such as the 911 Carrera S or a Ferrari California. At least, when I browsed through the LC500 forums, I found that these cars are quite often considered as alternatives. Let's see how those depreciation curves compare to the LC500. You can see that the LC500 is still displayed in blue, and that in green we have the Carrera S, and in orange the California. And this, by the way, includes the normal California and the T. Now I'm not going to cover the depreciation curve of the Carrera S and the California in detail. For those cars I already made full depreciation analysis. And if you're interested in that, then I recommend that you check out those. The links to those videos are included in the description of this video. So what do we have here? Well, first we can see that there's a large difference in price points, and that actually these cars aren't really in the same league. A new LC500 is the same price as a 2-year-old Carrera S or a 10-year-old California. Now when we look at the curves, there we can see that the one of the LC500 is not bad at all. In absolute terms, the LC500 loses the least of the bunch. But this is of course not really a fair comparison, because the price point is a lot lower. However, also in relative terms it performs extremely well. In the first year it only loses 12%, and this is a lot less than a 911.1 Carrera S, which sits more in the 20% range. Now the drop for the California is more in line with the LC500, so all in all I think that the LC500 performs quite good. But how does it perform when it is compared to all of the other cars which I analyzed on the channel? That we can find out by using the depreciation leaderboard. And this leaderboard compares the cars based on the age of a car market and the average relative depreciation rate. So let's have a look. You can see that the age of the car market is displayed on the horizontal axis and the relative average depreciation rate on the vertical axis. Now I realize that there are way too many colors in here for you to find the cars, so every time when I talk about a specific car, I will point it out with an arrow. The LC500 is now 2 years old and depreciates with an average rate of 9.5% per year. And that means that this bubble over here is the LC500. You can see that it scores way above the trend line, and this is then also a very good score. It is not as good as a 911.2 GT3, but those have then also extremely strong residuals. It is however a lot better than the V8 version of the DB11, which has an average rate of 22.8%. And on that note, let's wrap up and conclude. The LC500 market. The more I read about the market and the car, the more interesting they became. Like I said, I never really paid a lot of attention to the LC500. But after making this video, I'm quite intrigued to try one. The car itself seems pretty unique, but so are the values. And you are of course here for the values, so let's talk values. Of course, the LC500 depreciates, just like any other car. I don't think that this is a surprise. The residuals are, however, quite strong when they are compared to other cars. We just saw an excellent score on the depreciation leaderboard. Moreover, we saw that the curve starts to show the first signs of flattening, and I do expect then also that this behavior will continue. Personally though, if I would be in the market for an LC500, I would not go for a car from model year 2021 or 2020. Those cars will still take the first depreciation hit, and updates on the newest model years are only minor. Therefore, I would go for a car from model year 2018. They are still relatively fresh, and Lexus has an excellent reliability track record. And on that note, we also arrive at the end of this video. Now if you enjoyed it, please remember to support the channel by smashing that like button. Also, if you liked this analysis but would have liked to see it for a different car, please comment the name of that car down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. And when you do so, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so you get actually notified when your requested analysis goes live. As always, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week for a new video.